Oh yeah, I'm not saying that I wanted a comic accurate racist Israeli in it. I was just saying that that they could have done a little better with her. That's all.
Welcome to the Weekly Fix podcast, where we're just two friends talking about our passions within movies, TV shows, gaming, and comics. Thanks for checking out the podcast. We hope you like it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Weekly Fix. But this is a little bit more of a special episode. We are going to be giving our full review and breakdown of Captain America: Brave New World. Now, of course, you know you're going to have me and Zane running our mouths this entire episode, but we thought it was time, after we talked a little bit of trash last week, to have our good friend Peyton back on the podcast, as he also went and watched Captain America: Brave New World, and we all have lots of things to say about it. So, without further ado, Zane and Peyton, why don't you guys take turns? How are you guys doing right now?
Man, I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to have Peyton back on the show, especially after the little bit of elbow nudging we gave him last week on ditching us for the movie. But yeah, amazing. Got tomorrow off. An amazing weekend. A great church service this morning. So I'm ready for this. I'm ready to talk about Captain America. Peyton, what about you?
I'm feeling great, man. But I feel like it was more than an elbow nudging and more of a stab to the neck with a dull knife. But yeah, happy to be here.
Well, hold on a second.
Great.
Before we get to see like how it's a dual knife, Jacob, do you mind pronouncing Mr. Peyton's last name real quick?
Oh, no. I think you need to redeem yourself after the first time. So why don't you go ahead and give us that full name for us?
Yeah, it's Peyton Hale. We are super happy to have you here. Glad to have you back. I would hate to mess it up twice in a row. So, and not even jokingly.
Probably
we
never
make sure fully. Yeah, and rightfully so. I should never be talked to again. If I could mess up your last name on a podcast twice, that would be pretty atrocious. So, but yes, okay. Well, welcome back.
Hey, you redeemed yourself. That's all that matters. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about this movie because I think even within our own little friend group here, we've had a lot of differing opinions. And I think it's actually crazy that I'm about to say this, but I think Zane is probably the most well-balanced as far as this movie goes. And I feel like Zane is usually maybe a little bit higher, a little bit more of a hater. And usually I'm having to combat the other way around. But Zane, I feel like you've been very balanced about this movie so far. I feel like you've been the most level-headed between me and Peyton, because I might be a little higher on it than I should be. I know Peyton's probably a little bit lower on it than he should be. So then why don't you tell us a little bit about how you felt about Captain America: Brave New World with our non-spoiler reviews starting off.
Well, first off, I always think my view is a pretty solid level-headed review. But yeah, I came into this movie not expecting much. And that's just for some of the delays in the experience. We had the writer strike, which took forever, and then we had the actor strike, and this movie really fell victim to that. And so my expectations going in were not very high, and probably were lower. This movie exceeded those expectations for me, howbeit not much. I had a good time. I enjoyed the film, but I do not think it's a good movie overall. It's got fun action. It's got, it does have a lot of heart behind it, but overall there was just some things, and we'll get really deep into it with the spoiler review, that really held this movie back for what I'm looking for in a movie. But I did have a good time with it. I did enjoy myself at the theater. So and that actually made it more. I was not expecting to enjoy this film at all. So that is a big positive for me coming out of the theater. And I think it is getting a little unwarranted hate from what I've seen some people do, because the reviews I've been seeing, and I haven't been delving too deep into them because I don't want to be an echo chamber anywhere before we review it ourselves. But I've been saying like it's not enjoyable, and I just don't think that's true.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to make. And one of the things when we talk about movies like this that you get a little worried about is when it starts getting this publicity and you start hearing people do maybe give unnecessary hate in your opinion, or maybe you hear people giving it unnecessary praise. You don't want that to eventually, the culture we live in, people do start echoing things without even going to watch it, without giving their own personal reviews. And so I think it is smart that we've all, I think, tried to stay away a little bit about from like what we've seen other people review it, and we're trying to give just our honest opinions on what we saw when we went to the movies. Now, Peyton, I know you were a little bit on the lesser side of things. I know you didn't enjoy it quite as much. You had some things that you really didn't like about it. So what did you think overall? What were your just initial thoughts of the movie?
I think I went in with the opposite of Zane, as I had super high expectations because I wanted another super down to earth Captain America movie in like great fight scenes and great storytelling, and I just think it fell short for me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people also kind of I've heard a lot of people throwing the words around, like, I didn't expect this, but from little things that I've seen on, like, X and Instagram, people were throwing around Winter Soldier a lot, and I know a lot of people regard that as one of the best MCU movies. Did you maybe were hoping we would get something in that nature for a Captain America?
That's exactly what I wanted, especially being Sam's first time,
Mhm.
like his first big movie. I wanted like hardcore Winter Soldier action.
Yeah.
Now,
Which I
did you
think is
want that or did you expect that?
I expected it,
okay.
especially
Ooh.
just from a Captain America standpoint. Like I just wanted a Captain America story.
Well, and that's something that I've seen a lot of people, which I went back and I watched some people's reactions to the trailer, because I was like, well, where were people getting this idea of Winter Soldier? And it seemed like a lot of people, after watching the couple of trailers that we did get, I can almost understand where the Winter Soldier vibes were coming from. They did kind of play it off like that. And so I don't know if that was necessarily a good thing on their part when it really clearly wasn't ever going to be that after watching the movie. But it also was kind of a smart thing to do because people love that movie so much. And how else are you going to get people into the seats? So I understand where people are coming from with that sentiment. Now, me personally, with my initial thoughts, I really didn't know what to expect for this movie. I know me and Zane had gone back and forth over the last couple months about being more so worried about this one because we've heard about all the reshoots, we've heard about all the bad narrative around this movie. So I kind of did go in with like an open mind. I didn't really expect anything amazing, and I didn't expect something terrible. And I think that's where for me it shined the best, is I actually did really enjoy it, like Zane was talking about, but it did definitely exceed my expectations of really not having expectations. When I was finished with it, I was very happy with the product that we got on the screen. I thought it was a lot of fun. We've mentioned a little bit of the action scenes. Those were probably some of the highlights of the movie for me. I think it did really good in those parts, but overall, I did enjoy the movie probably the most out of us three.
No, you definitely enjoyed it the most out of us three. I don't think there's any question.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of our little bit of a non-spoiler review. Now, one thing I do like to ask before we get into the spoiler thing is, would you recommend this movie for someone to go to the movie theaters and watch? And now I'll start off with this one. Being the person that did enjoy it the most, I would not recommend going to the movie theaters for this. And I think that kind of sounds crazy with how much I did enjoy it. I just don't think there is a lot of substance here that even warrants the movie ticket. I don't think it's worth your time necessarily. If you're a big Marvel fan, I would say go for it because I think you're really going to enjoy it. But overall, this is definitely a movie that I think if you wait till Disney Plus, I think you'll have a much better appreciation for the movie, not having to have spent extra money on it, and you just get to sit down on your couch and just enjoy a fun action movie. What would you all think about that?
Dude, that blows my mind that you say that. Like with how hype you've been since the theater, and that's not recommending people to go to the theater to see it. That's kind of wild. But I would echo that sentiment a little bit. I personally, what's sad for me is if you're gonna watch it, I think it is more enjoyable in a theater. Like, I think that it's a better experience, but I just don't know if it's worth watching
Mhm.
at home if you're not
Oh,
gonna have
okay.
those. Because if you're a MCU junkie, you're gonna go see this,
Mhm.
and if you're not, I wouldn't recommend watching this. Like, if you don't watch the MCU, I would never recommend someone to watch this film. There's hundreds of movies that I would recommend over this one. So if you're not going to go to the theater for a fun time out with some awesome action, with some good sound editing, and just enjoy a Red Hulk on the screen, then I would say don't watch this thing at all.
Peyton, what do you think about that?
I feel like you should stay home and watch it on the couch.
Yeah.
because that's what it felt like, a Disney Plus series to me. That's what it felt like. I felt like it could have been done as a Disney Plus series.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, I did really enjoy the movie, and I think I don't want you guys to be like, well, he says he really liked it, but then he's telling me not to go to the movies. I just don't think there is the substance for, and we'll get into the plot and all that stuff, but there's a lot of things I think this movie could have done better, and I still did really enjoy it. I did have a great time at the movie theaters, but I just think it's not really necessarily worth it, and I kind of agree with what Peyton was saying, like, I think this is a really fun couch movie. Like, if you're a person that, like, enjoys the MCU, but you're not like us, like, if you're watching this podcast, you probably are like us, but if, like, you have some friends that, like, do like it, but they don't necessarily keep up with it as much as you do, this isn't one of those movies I'd be like, oh, drag them to the theaters to watch, because they will end up having a really good time. I think they will have fun, but I think, again, it's more of one of those things that you're just going to enjoy watching on the couch. So I'm excited to kind of delve into some of that a little bit more. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to touch on before we got into the spoiler review aspect of this review?
I'm ready for spoiler time. Let's get into it.
Let's dive into these spoilers, baby.
All right. Well, so the first thing I really want to talk about with the spoilers, and I think it's been a big talk because whenever you have a Hulk on screen, people are going to talk about, well, how does it look? How does the CGI? How were the visuals for the movie? And I think that's where I want to start with this one, because I think this is one of the things I was most impressed about was there weren't any scenes throughout the movie that I really felt taken out of. Now, at the end of the movie, we do get a couple of scenes when they're in the, like the, what are they called? The cherry blossom area. There was a few scenes there I was like, oh, that could have looked a little better. But I think overall they did a really good job with Red Hulk. I liked how Captain America looked. I liked the whole overall setting of the movie. What did you guys think of, like, the visuals and the CGI throughout it?
Yeah, personally, I really enjoyed the CGI and the visuals that were just, given to us. I think they killed Red Hulk. I think they really did a good job of capturing the likeness of Harrison Ford within the Hulk himself. In that aspect, I do think that they really kind of missed the mark on Sam for some of his shots for wings and what they did with his with the fighting, just kind of how they incorporated his wings. It was fine. There was just some points where I'm like, I don't know if I quite think that looks good. Now, I didn't hate any of the visuals, especially the CGI stuff, because there were, like you said, there was no glaring issues that I was like, man, that looks awful. But for the most part, I was very satisfied, but I think it could have looked better, especially like there were some points, especially where the Celestial Island, where it was like, there's a lot of fog, there's a lot of like obscuring. I could tell that they were being cheap with some stuff. And then the planes, I'm kind of a stickler for that kind of stuff. When you do have movies like Top Gun Maverick that exist that just look so much better. So I think the visuals were good. I don't think they were great, but that's a good thing, right? For a Marvel film in current generation, for the visuals to look good, that's a step up.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, especially with what phase we're in now, of how it looked better than the like last few movies we got. But I think they missed a huge mark with Celestial Island to me, because what a huge like plot line and story point to make that look absolutely beautiful, and they just kind of snubbed it for the little battle scene. And then I have one more issue with the visual. I don't know if we're going to talk about post-credit scene yet, but I can wait if you want me to.
No, go ahead. This is the whole visual aspect of this, so tell us what you didn't like about it.
Post-credit scene, you can tell it was a reshoot. I feel like the background behind Sam when he's talking, like the whole raft, you could tell it was fuzzed out, and I did not like it at all. Other than that, I think Red Hulk and everything looked fine.
Oh, I actually just thought of something. I am curious what you guys thought about the Giancarlo Esposito scene when he was captured. When he was captured and Sam went and talked to him, did you guys think that looked good and was accurate for what we were getting told on screen?
You can go ahead, Peyton.
I mean, I didn't hate it. I think it could have been better, but I mean, they're just kind of letting them, I don't know. I think that's a plot issue partly too, than just visual.
Yeah, I think for that scene in particular, I felt like, oh, this is a green screen. And that's those things that you really don't ever want to feel. but just the way they like angled the camera shots in the hallways, like to show them like walking down the hallway. And again, it does kind of go back to what Peyton was just saying. Like that could be like a story point or really like a director, issue. Like I think they could have done a better job of hiding some of that stuff than they did.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the real failure of this movie is not in much more than the editing. Now there's a lot in the writing, but I think this film was edited to death. And when you edit something so many times, it's really hard to get something that's fluid and that functions and that is really solid. Because some of these might work entirely by themselves, but once you put them in spots and places, it's really difficult to kind of mesh those together. But visually, I think that was the only scene where I was like, dude, it's kind of weird. Like the background didn't match the scene to me. He was standing like in a tunnel, no guards around him, like he's supposed to be like in prison-esque, but like it's like a sandist behind him. I don't know. Like in a bunker that leads to the outside. It was just like
I
a
totally
weird
agree.
spot.
Like if you as an audience member can pick out what a reshoot is, it failed in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that may be on me for knowing that he was added in reshoots. I'm curious to talk to someone who didn't know Giancarlo Esposito was not in the first cut of the film, like if they would have picked up on that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think they would have, to be honest with you, because I do think they did a good job of incorporating him into the story, and I think that's what I want to lead into next when we start talking about this review of the movie, because I wanted to get the visuals out of the way, because people always like to complain about how stuff looks, and that's probably been the thing I've seen the most controversy on social media, is people like saying it looked bad, and I never got those things, so that's why I wanted to get that out of the way. But let's talk about the story a little bit, because I do think that this did some stuff that we do want in Marvel movies, but it also was very lacking. So Zane, why don't you start us off with the spoiler aspect or the story aspect of this review? What did you think of the story? Did you like it? Did you feel like it left you wanting a whole lot more? Or do you think for the type of film that we got, it was okay?
So I think that the story, what they wanted to tell us with the story, was fairly good. I love the progression of Red Hulk. I really like what they were trying to do there, and then the heart behind the story with Sam, really kind of coming into his own as a hero. I like those aspects of the story. I did not like the leader at all. And I think it's just because he feels absent from the film, but he is the main villain. So that's really challenging for me, story wise. He just doesn't seem to be integrated into this film well at all. And then the whole we're gonna share we're gonna share vibranium or adamantium with everyone subplot that they're running with like all of the nations of the world, but it's only between two nations, is also super interesting to choose. And Japan is, we're nitpicking here, but Japan's a really weird one to pick to be the one that sends the fleet. It really should have been China. China is the actual world superpower. Japan is not. If the United States wanted to go to war with Japan, it would be over very quickly. So I would be, there's just some of those story aspects that I'm like, I don't know why there's only two countries here at the end that are negotiating. Like, why is and we only saw three outside of the U.S. It was, was it France? What was the other ones?
I think it was France, India, and Japan.
Yeah, India.
Yeah, France, India, and Japan. India, that's the other one. It's like, okay, like, why are I don't know. And so some of the story, when it so heavily revolves around those global superpowers fighting over adamantium, it would be nice to flesh that out or have a better understanding of the actual threat that globally we are at. It seems kind of odd to just kind of shoehorn only us and Japan into a conflict without really diving too deep into everything else and all the other world superpowers that would be trying to get this. So those were kind of my struggles with the story point. There's a lot more, but I want to give somebody else some points. Peyton, what about you?
I loved what they tried to do, but I just feel like they failed, especially with the leader. Honestly, the leader is my main issue because me and my wife Jackie were talking about it. She called him a worse screenslaver from Incredibles, like controlling people with like the phones and the sounds and stuff.
Yeah.
I
Valid.
feel like his entire character could have been done better. I mean, look what they did. Sidewinder in the comics looks goofy. He's a goofy looking dude, but I feel like they did great with Giancarlo and modifying that for a current like era. They could have done so much better with the leader.
Well, the leader looks great in the comics. Like, I don't know why they had to give him.
He looks. I mean, he's got a tall head. Like he looks funky too. I mean, if you're trying to bring people into like a real world, I just feel like they could have done better design wise. I just feel honestly, like you said, it was chopped up and pieced together, and I feel like it was fast, and they tried to do way too much in a little bit of time.
Yeah, and I think that would be also kind of my biggest issue with the movie as a whole is the reason I knocked the most points off in my ranking is because the movie did feel too small. I feel like they had a really great opportunity to make this like a global scale thing. Like, let's make it actually a big war. Like, we were joking about it, like when we saw like Japan and the US fighting over Celestial Island for like those couple of seconds. Imagine if that was like a full-blown war going off, and then in the background you also had Harrison Ford trying not to turn into Red Hulk, right? Like, there was a lot more that they could have done there, and I feel like they did play it a little safe. And safe necessarily isn't bad, because one of the things I do want to touch on with this movie is it does tell a complete story, which is something we always want. We always want a movie to tell a complete story. You don't have to necessarily have watched anything else. You want to be able to go into the movie, you can watch it, you understood what happened. If you never picked up anything again, you knew what happened. Like, the story is complete. And I think they did a good job with that. Like, if you didn't watch anything before this, you didn't watch anything after this, it's just a cool action movie about, an island and all this stuff. It doesn't need a whole lot of other things to tell you what's going on. So I appreciate that, but I feel like they did play it too safe, and they could have done a lot more stuff with it. So that's kind of where my issue comes in with it, is it just had potential. Like, looking back at the story, I'm like, oh, they could have done a lot of cool things. They could have gone this way with it, and I think it would have been a lot better. But I think they just wanted to play it safe. They wanted to try just get a win under their belt starting off the year, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's where my biggest criticism comes from. And I feel like I agree with you guys on the leader. And a funny thing about that actually is, you guys know I love Funko Pops. I think all of us in here like Funko Pops in this podcast right now. But the leader Funko Pop looks so different from what we got in the movie. A lot of people are curious as to like what the original storyline with him was. Because in the Funko Pop, like, he has hair, he looks like a lot more traditional leader, and that's been kind of like a funny thing going on. Is like, what did they do? What did they change to leader that they told Funko to make him look like this? And then the movie comes out and he looks way different. So I thought that was kind of funny.
They gave him a design sheet and then completely changed him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, yeah,
I do want to touch on one other thing before we move on from story, and I think they did a really good job with the Isaiah Bradley stuff.
Yes,
they handled that incredibly well. That is a dark spot in America's history in the MCU, and how they incorporated that and how they moved him into the story, I thought was really good. There is challenges within that, to not make a people group feel too attacked, or to balance that, to where it's compelling but not upsetting. And I think they really did that. I think they did that well, and I think they handled that to a great point. I do wish Sam would have been a little bit more aggressive at the end, to really get him out. Like, let's fix this, because it does kind of seem like he gets sidelined at the end. And I understand there's a bigger global conflict going on, but once that's over, I felt like that should have been emphasized more, as opposed to kind of just allowing it to happen. But I did want to say I think they did a good job with that, inclusion in the storyline. However, if you came in this movie with only watching the movies before, I think you'd been lost. And I don't think they did a great job explaining who he was, before showing. I think Chelsea would have been completely and totally lost if she picked up this movie and tried to understand who Isaiah Bradley was.
Yeah, I feel like I don't completely agree that you can just watch it and without watching prior, because Eternals with Celestial Island. I mean, this movie tried to be a sequel for two different movies in a show. So you got Eternals with Celestial Island, with now it's adamantium on it. You've got Incredible Hulk with the leader and all that, and now you have Falcon Winter Soldier as a sequel to that as well. Hence why I said they tried to do way too much. And I feel like you had to watch at least a little bit of those to understand completely what's going on.
So I guess that's going to be a thing that we'll discuss a little bit more, because I still, like, looking back even with those things, I feel like I could have, like, I know my wife watched it and she enjoyed it a lot and she hasn't seen any of those things. And I think that also goes into, like, if you go into the movie prepared, like, this is a Marvel movie, there's superheroes, there's going to be stuff that's not the same on Earth. That's where I feel like Celestial Island doesn't really take you so much out of it. You're like, you know what, it's a superhero movie. Maybe that has a backstory, and if I want to go out and find that backstory, I can. Like, it's available to me. But I didn't feel like it was super, like, necessary to know, like, there's this island here and it has this rare mineral or this rare, you know, something that people want. I think that kind of just makes sense in the theme of just, like, superheroes and stuff like that. The leader thing, I doesn't necessarily feel like you needed to watch Incredible Hulk, because I don't think they ever mention him by the leader. And you could just assume that this is just the villain of the movie. He's just a genius that's gone bad, and he's just trying to, you know, get his own way and, you know, get back at the president because the president did something wrong to him. So I didn't feel like that necessarily even played a part into needing to have watched other stuff.
No, and I would agree with that aspect. You know, you even talk about, like, Betty Ross and the issues that she has with Thaddeus Ross. Like, they explained that they're on ends, and I think they did a good job of not setting on those stuff too much. And you touched on the leader, and I'd agree. Celestial Island, I don't have an issue with that. I think they captured it, but I don't think they really gave any kind of heads up for Isaiah Bradley. I feel like they expected the audience to know exactly who he was without really. I think there was one, like, you know, he's been in prison, but they've got him out. There was, like, one passing comment about him being, like, the what is it? The ashamed Captain America, or forgotten.
Joaquin said it. Yeah,
the forgotten Captain America. And I just feel like that could have been shown a little bit better. And man, yeah, when Joaquin walks in and he is, you know, a Captain America who fought for the nation, and then just had to go to prison for 30 years and it is out now, and you walk into that as a military person, as someone who has, you know, is in a minority, and then you completely do nothing but disrespect him in his own gym. I was like, that's upsetting. Like, that scene is really, really bad, and I think that's a bad part of the story.
Not only is the scene bad, but the acting is bad. Like, I really liked like the new Falcon, Joaquin or whatever his name is, in the show. But dude, I feel like the end scene with him at the end in the hospital bed, I think, was great. But the scenes at the gym and in the limo were cringeworthy to me, bro.
Well, so that's going to lead us perfectly into our next thing that I wanted to talk about, was the acting and the writing of the movie. And, you know, you touched on a little bit about Joaquin's character. Do you feel like that was more so him doing a bad job at acting, or would you put that more on the writing?
I feel like it's a mix of both, because I felt like he was trying too hard, and then the writing, just the dialogue between everybody helped zero.
Yeah.
There is no actor on this planet that could have made those jokes funny.
No.
like I think 1000% that was a terrible writing, and then the director that allowed him to go to that level to be like, yeah, if you just put more into it, it'll be funny. Like, trust. I just like, I don't blame Danny Ramirez at all for that. I think when he's acting in this film, I think he's fine. But I think every time I cringe, or every time I'm very upset with him, it's a forced bad joke, which is all he was supposed to be in this film, according to the writers, was I need you to be comic relief every
Mhm.
second you're on screen until you take a rocket to the face.
Which is it's what Sam was to Cap, and I mean, if you think about
He
it, like the
wasn't
right hand
comic
guy who
relief.
but he made good jokes. He was tough, but he made good jokes, and we
Mhm.
laughed. Like I'll never forget when him and Bucky were sitting in the car, and Cap kissed, oh, what's her name? Oh God,
Yeah, Agent Carter.
Agent. No, it wasn't Agent Carter. It was the
Yeah.
her daughter or niece, whatever.
Granddaughter or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And they were like, it's like that's good writing. Like it's good writing. And the jokes with Spidey and Civil War were great.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like that's what they were reaching for, but they couldn't grab it.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
and
I think a big part of that is that Danny, I guess it's Jaquin. I'm sorry, Joaquin. Oh my goodness, Joaquin. His jokes were only to put down Isaiah Bradley. Like for the most of it. For the most of it, it was technology.
All them
jokes
old
that
the whole
aren't
time.
Funny.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what iMessage or AirDrop is. What a
Can I
loser!
make
And
the
it's like,
text bigger for you?
dude's been in prison for 30 years,
Yeah.
and he's like 80.
And he can
Well,
break you in
That's
half
not
still.
funny.
I will say one joke that did land for me, and it wasn't really even necessarily a joke, but when he did pull off the plastic film over his screen,
Okay, that was good.
kind of funny because
That was-
that is such an older person thing to
That's
do.
good.
Like they don't want to take that off because they don't want to scratch their screen, and they just take it right off. I thought that was funny, but I don't want to necessarily say though, like just based off him, I think it was more writing for him that made him bad. But I do want to say there were some really great performances in this movie, and we did touch on Isaiah Bradley. I'm not sure what his acting name is, what his real life name is. Yeah, he did fantastic. I thought he might have done the best job in the movie. What do you guys think about his acting?
Phenomenal.
I thought it was great. Yeah,
yeah.
But I think Harrison Ford did the best job.
Zane, what did you think about Harrison Ford?
Yeah,
I think Harrison Ford did a very Harrison Ford job here. I think that he is collecting a paycheck. I think the fears that Jacob had was a little bit recognized in that he was doing a solid job as an actor, but I don't think we got Harrison Ford's top game. I think he did a good job. And for any other actors, like it could have been great. I guess I just expected a little bit more from him, and it may just be his age. I may be a little bit of just not used to him at this age, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more conflict, especially like when he was trying to fight down the rage and potentially trying to do a little bit of a better job. I think he could have done I think the acting could have been better for him. I was expecting more, but I think Carl Lumbly actually did a better job in his role than Harrison Ford did. Even though Harrison Ford did fine as Thaddeus Ross, I wasn't overly impressed with him.
I just loved the communication with when he went to Japan and talked to Japan's president. That I feel like that the dialogue between them two was some of the best in the movie. Honestly, I mean, I think that Isaiah Bradley's character did fine. He was great. Those two were my favorite. And I just feel like Harrison Ford, you could tell a seasoned actor who knows what he's doing.
Yeah, so do you think Harrison Ford did a better job than Giancarlo Esposito?
Yeah.
So that's one thing, though. I will just go ahead and say I don't even feel like Giancarlo was like in the movie enough that I even want to really talk about his acting. And I do want to credit the movie for that, because we know when they did the reshoots, we started getting all these publicity things about, oh, Giancarlo's in this movie, like he's going to save it. And I think they did do a really good job of incorporating him in the movie and not overdoing it with him. And I feel like the same way about him as I do Harrison Ford, right? They're already on a level of acting that they can kind of just give it, half-heartedly, and it's going to be very solid acting. And I, go back to saying what you said about the money comment. I thought it was funny. I saw an interview with Harrison Ford, I think earlier today, actually, and they asked him, they're like, do you ever get like weirded out by like yelling and doing all these things? And he's like, that's what the money's for. So I think that's kind of like literally, pointing back to what we were saying there. But no, I think Harrison did great. I think Giancarlo in the scenes he was in was phenomenal. But what did you guys think about Anthony Mackie? Obviously the star of the movie. I am, his first standalone movie. He finally, Tom Holland doesn't have that on him. He is finally the main actor of a movie now. What did you guys think about his overall role and like just how he, performed as the new Captain America?
I thought it was good. I feel like, again, the writing ruined some of it. Like, I feel like he did well with what he was given. Like, again, the limo scene, why would Sam be so impressed with a limo when he has vibranium.
Vibranium.
Vibranium wings. He's fought aliens twice. He was in a civil war with the Avengers. Why are we so pumped about a limo?
Zane, what do you think?
Yeah. It's really hard to distinguish between the acting, the writing, and the directing in this film. I feel like Anthony Mackie has two acting levels, which is angry, mad, serious, and completely joking. And I feel like there's almost no in between. And so I don't think he did a good job acting. I don't think it was bad, but when you don't have good direction, you don't have a good script to work with, I really can't judge you as a leading character. I think he made a joke about, timing with the Falcon there in the bed, it's all about timing. And it's like, yeah, and I'm thinking that, I'm like, your jokes aren't timed well at all. Like, you're not telling well-timed, well-paced jokes. They're out of place. Like, that's a bad joke. So I think Anthony did fine, but I was not impressed. I still have the little bit of like, I'm not positive he can carry a movie on his own, and I just feel like he doesn't have range. And that's my issue with it, is I feel like I really need to see him somewhere other than angry or joking around. And I think that shines the brightest with the scene with the Winter Soldier. When Bucky comes in and he's, we have Torres there on the operating table, like his best friend, the one who he took out there, he gave wings, that, he's there because of him. And he laughs in that scene. Like there is a joke that's cut and he's laughing with Bucky. He makes the comment, did your speechwriter write that for you? And I just, dude, I don't know if that's because he couldn't carry the emotional weight of that scene and they needed a joke there, or if that's just terrible writing. But that really stood out to me. Like, man, I need more from the lead.
Feel like honestly, I didn't hate that much. I feel like when those two are together, that their on-screen chemistry can fix most things.
Yeah.
I didn't hate that moment, because sometimes in those situations in life, a little joke is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, coming from the person who is coming to help, not the person who is experiencing the trauma.
I mean, but people deal with trauma different ways. Like, I tell jokes a lot at work when there's a lot of pretty crazy things going on. Like, it's how people handle their hard days and their issues and their trauma, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, and well, talking about that scene, because thinking about the movie, that was one of the best scenes. I feel like that scene had a lot of impact, right? Like, we're really starting to get down to the nitty-gritty. Like, this person, they talked about they had to revive him multiple times, his heart stopped. Like, that's a powerful scene. And I don't think it was Anthony Mackie's fault for the joke. And I don't necessarily, hate the joke. I don't like the joke. I kind of wanted to see how that would play out without it. Like, I did want him to have that emotional weight on his shoulders as he goes into this final fight, like as this stuff starts to unfold. And I think more so for Anthony Mackie, this proved to me that he can lead a movie. I definitely enjoyed what he did. I liked a lot of the ways he acted. I liked a lot of his, the way he did things, but I do think he needs to be given better writing. I do think he needs to be given better direction. We just talked about seasoned actors. I don't think he's one of those actors, and he might get there, he might not ever get there. Not every actor is capable of this, But there's actors that can be given a bad script and can still make it work just because they are so talented at what they do. And I think if maybe we had one of those actors in the starting role, like I think we could probably have put obviously the other Captain America, Chris Evans. He probably could have delivered a lot more of these lines and maybe fixed a lot of these script issues that we're having. You know, Robert Downey Jr. is another one that we've seen in the MCU that are just phenomenal actors that can fix some of those things. Like I said, I don't think he can't get there, but I think with what he was given, he did do a good job. So I was impressed overall with his acting.
Yeah, I mean, I love him as Captain America, honestly. Like, he flows with the shield, the action scenes are great, but again, I don't think many things could have saved the writing and direction on this film. Now, put him with the Russo brothers coming up, I feel like he could do so much better.
Yeah,
I agree. I do want to say I do love Anthony Mackie as Captain America. I'm glad Sam Wilson is Cap. I think that was the best choice that the Russo brothers made, kind of in Endgame, kind of rounding it out, sending the series forward, was giving him the shield from Cap, because he does stand for what Captain America stands for. You know, he's consistent and he shows it. Like they talked about it. The best scene I thought was when he was talking to Torres about the weight of always being perfect and of having to be on because the pressure's on, because if you don't, you're jacked up. And I really, really like that. And it really kind of shines forward for the stage that he's on and the pressure that he's under to get to the level that he's at currently. I like that a lot. And so I do enjoy Sam Wilson as Captain America. I just don't think the writing supported a good performance from Anthony Mackie.
Well, and this does, and this does go back to kind of diving back into the story a little bit. That was one of the things you just touched on, that kind of end scene where they're talking about the weight of everything being on your shoulders and stuff like that. I really did appreciate what they did with Anthony Mackie, and they did make it a point of emphasis multiple times throughout the movie where he hasn't taken the serum, right? He is pretty much a normal human being outside of having the tech and the abilities that he has given to him, right? I really like that moving forward as him being the leader of the Avengers. And they do make another point of emphasis with this, with Joaquin. Like, I didn't want to be, Iron Man, or I forget the superhero he even referenced, but he wanted to be Falcon, right? That was who he aspired to be. And they used I think Bucky also said that, you're someone people can aspire to be. Steve Rogers was somebody, I forget the exact wording. I think, Zane, you might know what they said.
Yeah,
there.
He said, Steve was somebody that he gave people hope and that they could believe in, but you're someone they can aspire to.
Yeah, and I love that storyline throughout it. So I did want to touch back on that because that's something I forgot to bring up with the storyline. I thought they did an excellent job at that. Now, Peyton, one thing you just brought up a little bit was the action scenes. And for me personally, this is where the movie shines. You guys know all the jokes we have on here about, I just wanted to see Red Hulk and Bruce Banner Hulk go at it. Like, I wanted to see stuff like that because I'm a big action fan. This movie delivered for me as far as action goes. From the opening scene when we see Falcon flying through the air, I loved when he hits the ground, he looks up at the guys all about to shoot him and he says, wait a second, and then the impact from his hit kind of blows them away. Like, all that kind of stuff was really fun. Yeah, I'm gonna start with you, Peyton, because you brought it up. What did you think of the action scenes throughout the movie?
I really enjoyed them. I feel like that's probably some of the only points in the film that I was enjoying it with a smile on my face, and then they started talking again.
Oh my!
Before I do that though, I wanted to get your opinion on the former Israeli widow. I liked her action scenes, but I want to know what you guys thought about her character and her acting.
Zane, why don't you go ahead with this one?
Yeah, Ruth was fine for me. I don't like that she was a widow. I would have really liked her to have been a Israeli agent instead. I think I don't understand why we're taking Israeli soldiers and agents and making them previous widows. I don't get that.
Russians.
Yeah, like, why are you working for a Russian organization? That's kind of strange and odd, and
right.
And I think a dumb choice. I thought her acting was was actually kind of spot on. I think she played that part very role. That I think she, yeah, that role very part. I think she played that part very well. I think to carry, to be such a small stature, but to carry such a big presence, I thought was actually something that's challenging. She always seemed like she was knowing what's going on, but she's also not stupid and just follows orders. She does what she needs to do. So I like that character. I like the inclusion of her, and I think the acting was fine. Once again, we did talk about there's a lot in this movie, and so I feel like maybe her inclusion wasn't super needed, and she was she showed up very conveniently sometimes. Like, I'm not quite sure
Yeah.
like how she got there so quick, and like, why is she here? Like, so there's some points there where it's like, okay, like you're in West Virginia, and now you're in Norfolk, and now you're back at the White House, and now you're at prison, and now you're on a carrier in the Indian Ocean. This is phenomenal, crazy.
My only explanation for that is she must have the same tech that Cecil from Invincible has, and she just teleporting places, because that was probably like my biggest problem with the story of the movie is the convenience factor of a lot of things that did take place. I always thought it was funny when we see Falcon and Cap, they're like, all right, we're going to take off. We're going to get to this carrier. We're going to tell Ross that he needs to chill out. Like, we can't go to war with Japan. And so they take off in their suits that can do, like, break the sound barrier. And when they get to the ship, she's already there. So, like, where did they go? Like, did they stop and eat real quick? Like, what happened to give them time? So, but overall, I think she did a solid job. I think there were some things, like you were just mentioning, I wish they wouldn't have changed. Like, there's no need to make her a widow. And it feels like that has become, like, such a common thing for these side characters in Marvel to have. And it almost feels like they're doing it just so we're like, oh, that makes sense as why she was able to beat up these people in this hallway, right? She's a widow. We don't necessarily need them to be widows for these people to have these abilities. You can have them be an agent for the Israeli spies, and she's just gone through some intense training, another way. Not everything has to be connected. So I thought she did a fine job. Again, I think more of her character was so just convenient to be where she was when she was. So I don't think she really had a big enough part in the movie for me to, like, give points for her role or to take points away for her role.
I just feel, I agree though. I feel like comic book wise, she was. I mean, she wasn't, but she was like Captain Israel. She was this souped up Israeli Defense Force fighter, like, and she wore a Star of David on her chest in some of the comics. Like, I just feel like it's such a cop out to make her a widow, and I feel like that's part of the political climate we're in. Honestly, they didn't want to do that, which is fair. They don't want it. That's whatever.
Well, she was incredibly racist in the comics. Like,
oh yeah, really, I'm not saying that I wanted a comic accurate racist Israeli in it. I was just saying that, like, that they could have done a little better with her. That's all. And my point with her was, if you could have added, you could have taken her out of the movie and added a secret like the head of the Secret Service, and he or she would have done the same thing.
Yes.
And it wouldn't have changed one thing in that movie. So,
no,
but
for sure.
Back to the original point, I thought the action scenes were good. I enjoyed them. They put a smile on my face. I was really hoping from Sam I'd get the sun's getting real low at some point, but he never said it. But I thought it was good.
Zay, what did you think about the action?
I think the action was fine. I thought I didn't think it was incredible. I thought the fighter jet scene was very stupid, and the action scene not written well at all for that fighter jet fight scene we got at Celestial Island. The fact that Sam is trying to take down the F-18s, and Japan already has F-35s in the air, and they start attacking Sam instead of the F-18s that are literally shooting rockets at their fleet, killing people. And they're like, what if we took down this dude that's in the air that's trying to stop them with us? Like, it's just like, and I understand that's a writing issue, but that's also like part of the action. Like, that fight scene lasts maximum 4 minutes if they write it well. And so that's a challenge for me. I thought the Hulk scenes were great. I thought they did a really good job with those. Those were fun. The fight scenes in the prison, for for the leader, I thought were pretty bad. It's just so choppy. It doesn't seem like they cut those well. It doesn't seem like there was a flow to the fight, and so it's like, yeah, like I just don't get how that fight scene ended with them victorious. And so it didn't really tell a story as a fight scene. It was fine. Like we got to see some punches. We got to see some, some people get shocked with, the highest powered tasers possible, and neither of them have superpowers, but yet they just stand up right after it, like nothing's happened. So there was I had trouble with some of the action. I did not think this action was great. I thought it was fine. I thought there was good portions to it, but overall the action was just fine for me.
Well, it's easy for me to get excited about action scenes because I really liked it. I had a really great time. I'm upset that you didn't like the fighter jet scene as much. Like, I thought that was really, really cool, kind of showing them flying through the air. I loved the usage of the shield throughout the entire movie. I think they did a really good job of using it in certain ways. Like, when he's in the air and he's using it, like, holding it up to, like, block the jets shooting at him, and he uses it to throw it and take the missiles out. Like, I thought all those were really, really cool scenes. I talked about earlier in the, when we started talking about action, the very opening scene of the movie, when we first see Captain America, I loved seeing him just kind of walk through this, I think it was like a church type setup where he was breaking into, where they were supposed to be doing the exchange for the adamantium that they had found with Sidewinder and stuff. I love just kind of watching him walk through there and just take everybody out. And then he gets the one guy that's a bit bigger than him. He gets a little bit of a fight out of him, but then he ultimately wins and closes that out. Like, I thought a lot of those action scenes were really fun. I loved the Red Hulk fight. I thought it was really well done, and I loved the version of a Hulk that we got. I feel like that's like a really cool Hulk. It was very menacing. I love when Sam took off flying, that you just see Hulk just flying through the air after him with how far and high he can jump. Like, all those things were really cool. I love the usage of the vibranium in his wings. That was really cool, kind of seeing him take hits with them, kind of charging them up, and then ultimately using them to pierce Red Hulk and take a pretty big hit at him. Like, I liked those aspects of the movie. I really liked that action scene. But yeah, I loved the fighter jet scene, so I was a little bit disappointed you didn't like it that much.
And I thought it was fun. I thought it was fun to watch and what was going on. The problem with it is that if the Japanese aren't morons in that scene, then it's not a scene. Like, it was only a scene because the Japanese were trying to also fight Sam. Like, he could have just went and taken down the F-22s without the F-35s on his back, and that scene doesn't last any time. And so that's my issue with it. It's not, because I enjoyed it. And like you said, those were great points. Like the way he used his shield, the way like the wings were used. I think he could have used the kinetic redistribution of power a little bit more. It seemed like he did not use that as much as somebody who doesn't have superpowers who had that ability would. I feel like he would be discharging that kinetic energy more than he did in this movie. But yeah, I think it was fun. But I just think it was such poor writing for them to have the F-35s attack him instead of the actual F-18s that it just made it less enjoyable for me. I was still having a blast watching him fly around. I mean, it was fun,
yeah.
But just that portion of it was rough for me.
And I feel like that comes from, I know we talked about it either yesterday or the day before about, you can tell that either the writers or the director didn't have like a military personnel on standby to ask questions when writing or directing, because they would have been able to be like, no, that's dumb. This is what would happen if jets started firing on battleships. That, and when our lieutenant or captain friend gets a call, they're in a live fire exercise, and just picks up his phone and walks off. Like, that's wild to me.
Like up a hill.
Listen, I've already given my argument for this, but for those people at home that are watching this, I don't see as big of an issue with that. Like, the end of the world, like a new world war is about to start. Like, if you have some important information, you're gonna drop whatever you're doing to take a phone call. So, like, I didn't have as big of a problem with that as you guys are having with it. But I do think it's like kind of a funny point to make. I think more so with that scene, the issue I have is the fact that the leader was able just to walk up to the base. And I'm sure he used his, like, flashes and was, like, mind controlling people, but actually, I'm going to take a route that Zane usually takes. That's probably something we needed to see. And usually I'm one of those people that's fine with, like, if you just give us a hint at it, I'm cool with just imagining it and just kind of putting the pieces together. There were some aspects of this movie, though, that I like, we should have seen a little bit more of that. Another scene that you guys have brought up, and I'm going to go ahead and get to it before you guys do, is the fact that they were able just to march into, like, probably the most high-tech secret, military base in the world, and they just used a little pocket knife to get in there. I agree. Like, those things needed expounded on. I think that would have been a great opportunity to show them, like, fighting and stuff like that. Like, we could have had some more action scenes there. So I know you guys are going to talk about it, so I figured I'd go ahead and get into it.
And not only getting into it, when they leave, he's like, hey, pack your suit. We're going to West Virginia to this base. And when they get out of the electric Hummer that they never stop to charge,
that we know of.
They're just in plain clothes. They're two regular dudes in plain clothes walking into a super secret military base when in the frunk of their Hummer, they have armor and weapons.
Like, well, I want to tag back to the training montage that the dude just picks up the phone real quick. It could have been that scene could have been satisfactory for Jacob and me. I feel like with just like a Bluetooth headset. Like if he just like clicked the headset and stayed in the fire and it was like, yeah, like this dude's gonna turn into the Hulk, and he'd be like, awesome, and then finish the fire and then go. Like,
but he didn't. But he didn't even know what the call was about. He was like, "Hey, what you need?" Like he didn't know.
Like,
but he didn't know it was something that Captain America had been like, "Hey, I need you to figure this out for me." Like, I called you back. Like, listen. I say all the time, I joke about like, oh, I guess I got to take a bathroom break at work. I'm taking a bathroom break for that phone call.
Oh my gosh. Live fire exercise. Get your buddies killed. Hey, I got to take this phone call, guys. I'll be right back.
I don't know who it is, but I'm going to pick it up and walk on top of this hill and then get killed off screen.
This guy with green eyes.
About it. Yeah. But yeah, like the breaking in, and it's kind of crazy because I don't remember what excuse they used for what is his Red Hawk? What's his little buddy's name?
Red Wing.
Why couldn't Red Wing break in, but the pocket knife could?
Yeah,
like they gave like an example for like Red Wing not being able to be used there. And they also called those telescopes when they are most clearly satellite dishes.
Telescopes.
Yeah, that goes back to me and you were laughing about that, Zay. Like, there was clearly an oversight when they were rewatching these scenes. They were paying no attention to what words were coming out of Sam's mouth. They were just, like, watching what was happening. I think it's kind of a funny point that Peyton brought up the other day. This movie did definitely have some like 90s vibes to it, like him just being able to hack anything on any computer he sits down at. He's like, I'm in. That was
like,
kind
give
of
me a break. It's like 90s hackers. Like he's like, I understand having like access to his like military encryption stuff, but he just walks into this dude's lab and he's like, click, 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 I'm in. Like, what, bro?
Well, see, that's kind of what I chalked up to him being able to break into like this top secret facility with a pocket knife. That's like such a 90s thing. Like this one guy has this capability of just breaking into anywhere. So I thought that was kind of funny.
I love that they walk in there without any weapons whatsoever other than a shield. They did take a shield and a pocket knife. And a pocket knife that they didn't use in combat.
You bring your human buddy with nothing.
He had the pocket knife.
Good luck,
he
Torres.
Had the pocket knife and Cap had the shield. That's a pretty deadly combo back in ancient times. A shield and a knife, like, come on now.
That's literally bringing a knife to a gunfight, dog.
And then the prison door closes behind them and locks, and they're like, meh, we'll just keep looking.
Okay, so this is another thing I knew you guys are going to bring up. All right. I don't have a bigger problem with that because that's such like a movie thing to do. Like when you're about to introduce a villain or you're about to do something, doors close behind people all the time and they just continue going about with whatever the scene is. So I understand your complaint with it. I just don't think it's something like worth like necessarily taking points off for or anything like that because that's just such a movie thing.
I mean, I would agree for the most part when it's like a door that's closing that you can still open. But when it's like a prison door that's like a vault, I feel like
you
it's a little bit, and that's
human
one
arms and
way
a shield.
out.
Well,
Like,
think about it. I mean, Cap's got to have a lot of faith in Joaquin with that pocket knife and be able to get that door back open.
Bro.
Right? So he just broke into the facility with the pocket knife. Surely we can break back out of it with the pocket knife. So that's all I got to say with that.
It's like a video game. Like the door shuts, like, oh, save point. Something big's about to happen.
Yeah, something bad's about to happen.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a bunch of health right here.
Literally, here's all the ammo you could possibly need that you're not going to have by the time this level is done. But no, overall, I think we kind of went off on a lot of tangents there. The action was good. I thought so. I think everybody kind of enjoyed it to the most part. I think that is probably one of the strong suits of the movie. Was the action was pretty solid. Now, one question I do want to ask both of you, and I'll start with you, Peyton. What did you think about Red Hulk's portrayal in this movie?
I thought it was awesome, and I thought Harrison Ford did a great job, and the FX team did a great job just making him look like Harrison as well. And then, like, in the little details, like a flower petal landed on his chest and it burned. Like the radiation, like the gamma rays burned it. Like you could, like Red Hulk is hot. Like he's Red Hulk, and it's that's probably one of my favorite parts. Is like when he touched something that it would burn a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Zane, what did you think about Red Hulk?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was fine. The only issue I have with Red Hulk was how he was defeated. And it's the same way that Banner is, right? Like, let's calm him down. I really would have liked to seen him overheat to the point that he couldn't maintain form anymore. He would have had to have resorted back. And so that's my only issue. Like, and that's, it just doesn't give as much diversity to the character. It kind of makes him just another Hulk. I love like what Peyton said there with the flower petal, with the detail of it burning because he is hot. I would have loved for Sam to use his knowledge and like to kind of like look at it, or maybe like the analysis of the pills that was so important that he could stop a live firefight to like show a weakness, like, hey, these are like increasing his internal body temperature to incredibly dangerous levels. Like maybe that's like a point you can exploit. Like I would have really enjoyed that fight to have been something other than, hey, the sun's getting real low.
Yeah.
Kind of finale. So
kind of anticlimactic.
Exactly. Super anticlimactic. And I get it that like he's trying to do it better. But I really would have liked to have seen Sam use his knowledge to kind of get out of some of those situations, because that's kind of the thing, right? It's like you're not as strong, you're not as good as most of the heroes because you don't have any power. So I really would have liked to have seen him use some other things other than Betty, kind of to get him out of Hulk form.
Right. Yeah, I think that's literally my only complaint with Red Hulk is I would have loved for him to have overheated, and that was what happened. I think a glaring issue with the movie, and it goes kind of back to the story a little bit, is that ending. I hated how like it was another convenient thing, right? We see them do this awesome like explosion, like Cap pierces Red Hulk right in the chest, uses the vibranium to like explode. Like that was so cool. And then all of a sudden everybody is there. Cap wakes up. Red Hulk still hasn't woken up. Like I was like, oh, perfect. It's gonna be just Thaddeus Ross, right? Like he's cooled out. That's why nothing is still going on. But then we see Red Hulk just like toss the car back off of him and jump right back up. Like he's like, that was such a big story point that if they would have just let that be Thaddeus Ross, like that's why the fight came to an end, was he took such a big hit that he couldn't keep form. That would have been awesome. And I think that would have honestly increased this movie maybe another half a point for me. Like, that would have been a big point for me that I was like, all right, I'm so glad they did it that way. But overall, I was happy about what they did with Red Hulk. And then the last thing I wanted to touch with you guys on is this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And one thing they did do with this movie is the first time ever, we didn't have the Marvel intro, right? We didn't get to see the cool little... Yeah. That brings me to this question. How do you guys think this movie fits in with the MCU? Do you think it did a good enough job of moving the story forward? Is it what we needed at this current point in Marvel history? You know, we're getting ready to have the Fantastic Four. We know we have Doomsday and Secret Wars coming out. Did this movie come out at a time that it should have came out? And Zane, I want to start with you on that.
No, absolutely not. This is not anywhere close. This should have definitely came out at least a year and a half ago, and we should have been establishing the Avengers for the last few years. Like if this could have came out even before Shang-Chi, and we could have then at the end of Shang-Chi had him recruit Shang-Chi into the Avengers, like this movie makes sense. But like to have nothing about establish, and why in the world in the post-credit scene is he not establishing the Avengers? Like that would have been the play to like kind of make this fit. Like, hey, it's grounded. We're tying in movies in the past that we haven't really touched on in a while. And we're closing up some loose ends. This is really nice. And then like boom, okay, we're moving forward. We had our grounded, fully encapsulated story that played into the MCU, and now we're moving forward with players that we know. But instead we got a stupid, meaningless, very dumb looking post-credit scene that's at the end of all of the credits, not even a mid-credit scene. So no, I think this came out at the wrong time and does not play well for our current situation, but they could have done a lot of stuff to improve it.
Peyton, what do you think?
Like I said before, you go to see an MCU movie, and part of that is getting in there and hearing that Marvel scroll, like that, the music, you want to see Marvel with all the characters in it. It gets you hyped up. Like it makes me stoked. And when I don't get that, I'm like, oh, cool, it's a Marvel TV show, like awesome. And to go off Zane's post credit scene, the most pointless post credit scene, and it was just the leader was just like, get ready to fight more people, and it was over. Like it made no sense.
Howard the Duck in Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy is a better post-credit scene and more influential to the MCU than this one was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as far as like the end credit scene goes, I don't even know if it's close. This is by far the worst end credit scene we've ever had in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it is just saying such the obvious thing, like, hey, you know, there's other people out there. Like, yeah, we've had
the Marvels had a better one, dude.
Yeah, literally, like, we've had how many movies now? Like, us as viewers don't need to know.
Yeah, we know there's a lot of crap going on. Like,
yeah, like we don't need like. We know there's Thanos of the world. We know we're getting Doctor Doom and all this stuff. Like, we don't need to be told that there's going to be more villains. Like, yeah, clearly. So yeah, that was the worst end credit scene I think we've ever had. I will say I agree kind of with what Zane was saying. I don't think this movie came at the right time. I don't think it does enough for Marvel in the current state that we are in to have warranted coming out when it did. I do think you did touch on a good point. This movie has been delayed many times. Maybe if it came out at its original release point, maybe we would feel a little bit better about it. But at this point, I kind of want to go back to what Peyton was saying. This could have been a much better season 2 of, Falcon and Winter Soldier or something like that. Right? Maybe it's a whole new show and it's called Captain America, whatever. You can keep the movie title Brave New World. This did feel a little bit more like that's what it could have been better at than, a full-fledged MCU moment. And it's kind of got me wondering if maybe that's why they didn't use that Marvel Cinematic like intro. Like maybe they knew it wasn't what it needed to be. Maybe that was insight on their half, like to be like, hey, it's not really deserving of that. We know we're just going to put this movie out there because we've already spent all this money on it. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So I agree. I don't think this movie came out when it did. I don't think it pushed Marvel forward at all, except in the fact that I think we do have a new leader of the Avengers. And just like you said, Zane, if they would have just been him recruiting it at the end, those end credit scenes, just him recruiting anybody, I don't care who it was. It could have been Shuri from Black Panther, even though we know she's probably not going to be the Black Panther for long. Like, I would have been happy with that. So I think they could have done some things that really could have solidified this movie and made sense for when it's coming out now. I think they just missed the point on it. But that's kind of our overall review of Captain America Brave New World. There's a whole lot more we could probably talk about, but are there any things you two wanted to touch on before, we end this review out? And Zane, I'll start with you there.
No, I think that pretty nails it. I really wanted to see someone else kind of get that end credit scene. I mean, that really could have moved it up for mine, at least like thinking wise, because, I'm curious if you have like an above or minus, like for like where this kind of stands for you. Like, is this better than Thor Love and Thunder? Is this better than Captain Marvel? Like, where does this stand for you? Kind of round out like the MCU rankings. Do you kind of have a feeling where that would land for you?
Yeah, I think I've thought about that a little bit of it, and we've talked about it so many times. I know you have a full-fledged list of all your Marvel rankings. I do not have one of those, so I do need to get one. But out of those movies you just listed, I do prefer this over all of those. I think about like Eternals. This is a better movie than Eternals. I do think this is a better movie than Black Widow. I personally enjoyed it more. One movie that I'm seeing a lot of people compare it to is Ant-Man Quantumania. I think this is a better movie than Quantumania. So I think it's going to be a little bit higher on my list than I think a lot of people might. But it's definitely not going to crack like probably even the top. It's probably going to be right around that top 20 spot, right? I mean, how many movies, MCU movies have we had? Is it 32?
34.
This 34 now. So, I mean, I could see this coming in at like, 23, 24-ish, like right in that 20-ish mark. But I would have to get them all together to see exactly where it is. Peyton, where would you, just off the top of your head, think that you'd place this movie?
Maybe a little lower than that. Maybe like 28, 29, honestly. Okay. But one thing I did want to say is, I did, when we were talking about how, like, whatever, I did want to see them, like, I wanted to see a mining operation of the Celestial. Like, okay. I wanted to, because you look back at Guardians and like Nowhere, that was literally they were mining a Celestial's head, right?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see, like, give me at least a base somewhere where they were like itching like adamantium out of it. You know what I mean? And like, I just like, even if it's just like a glance, like something small. Like Sam flies by it on the way to the ship, like something small. I just wanted something a little bit more with that.
Why is there vibranium in this Celestial? I'm curious if either you have an answer.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting topic coming up, and I really don't know much of why they are. I'm really interested to see what becomes of this, though, because obviously, as we know, the X-Men are coming, and somebody that likes to be able to control a lot of those type of minerals and stuff like that is Magneto, right? So I'm interested to see what they're going to do when Magneto eventually shows up in the MCU, because, I mean, he could just take this whole island and move it somewhere else if he wanted to. So I don't really have any explanation for this. That's where my original thought, though, goes. This is going to play a bigger part in the X-Men phase of Marvel rather than where we're at right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just in Eternals. TRC changed the entirety of this Eternal into, I believe, limestone is what it's supposed to be. So I'm curious why there's any vibranium in it at all. Like, she changed its molecular structure, and that's how they finished the movie. Like, I'm curious why there's any differing minerals in it. It's either all vibranium or none of it is, in my opinion.
Or adamantium, right?
Yeah, adamantium. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless it's like, which is that, because he said they mined it, unless it's like on the inside, like deep, and it just wasn't all limestone. I don't know. That's just another plot hole of this movie, honestly.
Yeah, I think that falls again on the writing aspect of it. Maybe someone at the writing group didn't watch Eternals. So I know there's a lot of people out there that skipped out on Eternals. Zayd, where do you have this one ranked for you on your Marvel list? Because I know you do have a complete list.
Yeah, I have this coming in pretty much right at 30 for me. So it's right below Ant-Man and the Wasp and right above Captain Marvel.
Okay. I think that's a pretty fair point. I don't think that, I think a lot of what we all are saying is pretty similar. And I think we all agree, all three of us agree where this movie is. I think mostly what this boils down to, and why our rankings do, vary the way that they do, is our tolerance for accepting the issues and accepting the plot holes and stuff like that. I think I'm a lot more like tolerable of those things. And maybe that's, not a good thing. I usually am a little bit like more willing to overlook certain things, which I know some people aren't. So I think if you're more so willing to overlook a little bit of those insights, we just brought up a big one potentially with the Celestial. Like, why is there adamantium there? If you're able to look over those things, I think you will enjoy this movie a lot more. Now, if you're someone that is, Zane is a lot bigger of a Marvel junkie than I am, so I understand his, problems with the movies, right? I still love Marvel. It's still one of my favorite things, but I'm going to overlook a little bit more of those things. Probably, I guess I might even do it more with Star Wars than he does as well, because I was able to look past some of the Acolyte issues. We won't bring up that show again right now. But I think that's kind of where this falls. If you're willing to look over certain things, I think you'll enjoy it a lot more. But yeah, I think that's fun. Now, last thing I wanted to close out with, what would you guys number this one? Where do you rate it at? And Zane, I'll start with you again on this. What is your rating for this movie?
Yeah, my rating coming in at 6 out of 10.
6. And Peyton, where are you at?
I'll go 5.5 out of 10.
5.5. Now, I'm going to go ahead.
We don't do halves on the show, Peyton. Sorry. Is it a 5 or is it a 6?
Do 5.
I will go ahead and I will give it a 7. Now, for my own personal ranking, I really like half points. I would give it a 7.5. There was things in this movie that I did enjoy that did elevate a little bit, and I think I would like to see maybe expounded on a little bit. I'm excited to see what Captain America does moving forward for Marvel, but obviously for the podcast purposes, I would give it a 7. I just don't think it's quite deserving enough for me to give it that uptick to an 8. I think it would have had to have done a lot more stuff to get there. So we got a 7, a 6, and a 5, which I think is where a lot of people are going to fall, is in those 3 points. I don't see many people giving this an 8, but I don't think many people should be dropping it below a 5. I think 5 is the bare minimum, and if you give it lower than that, I don't think you even watched the movie or, paid attention to what was going on. So what do you guys think overall with the movie? Are you, I know some of you guys, you said it was good, it was enjoyable, but do you have any closing thoughts before we ended this out?
I'll just give it a big meh.
Big meh. My closing thought is I think they did a really good job handling a lot of the sensitive subjects in this, and really missed a whole bunch of the big point of the movie. But I am very glad that we have 2 other banger of a Marvel films coming, and not so far away. That this will not stand out in people's mind for a long time. It'll kind of get the Echo treatment where everyone's like, whoa, what the heck was that? And then, they're not really talking about it next month, because then we have Daredevil Born Again coming. And then we have the Thunderbolts. And then we have the Fantastic Four. And then we have Ironheart. So, we have a lot of stuff popping down the train that is going to take some of the heat off of this. So that's what I'm really glad about. This did better than I expected. I was expecting a 5 or a 4. And it kind of gave me a 6 level enjoyment. So I definitely think I'm satisfied. I'm actually satisfied.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I think this is a good start for Marvel. I mean, we've had some really bad things to start off the year for Marvel in the past. I think this is a good one to get us going. I think, just like you mentioned, we have such big things coming out that by the end of the year, this won't be something we're even really thinking about or talking about anymore. And that also lends to the fact that the story really didn't, as we just talked about, give us a reason to think it should have come out when it did. So overall, I was happy with it. Peyton, I know you were a little bit more let down with it than we were, but we are super happy that we were able to have you on this review of Captain America Brave New World. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday evening to hop on here and talk to us about it. We'll have to have you back on again for another episode, which is maybe more of a normal episode, maybe one of these Invincible episodes coming up, because I know you've been enjoying that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a little bit more excitement out of Peyton for one of those. But guys, thank you guys so much for listening to this review episode of Captain America Brave New World. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow us on all the social medias. You can go subscribe to us over on YouTube. We have some things in the works this year that we're excited to hopefully get to, and hopefully expound a little bit more on that in the future. But we do want to thank you guys so much for all the support so far, and we can't wait to see you in the next review episode of Weekly Fix. But you guys can always catch us on the next episode coming out this week, which will be getting back on topic of Invincible and some other fun things that we're going to talk about. But again, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.